concise. Let's go to the family photo, and many thanks to Nadim and to the ambassador for joining us online for the first part. See you in 12 minutes. Okay. It's a coffee break without a coffee. So the coffee break without the coffee is much shorter than the real coffee break with the coffee. Wonderful. Please have a seat. And let's resume the session. We now get into the first thematic area that we are unpacking as part of this roundtable. We've organized the three of them in a pretty similar way. We'll have for each session a keynote to set the scene and notably to share with us the latest, developments and thinking on artificial intelligence, financing, and later today, decentralized development cooperation. We'll then have each time a 5-minute back-to-back intervention from an OECD member of the team to mirror these findings with the ongoing thinking in the OECD and the related work that we are doing. And then we have a panel discussion and the opportunity in the last block for all of you here or online to ask questions and intervene in follow-up to the experts that will take the floor. So it's really my pleasure to kickstart now the discussion on artificial intelligence and how this can help localize the SDGs. It has not escaped to any of you that this is the trendy topic of the moment, artificial intelligence everywhere. So why not in localizing the SDGs? A lot of thinking has been ongoing actually to see the potential of the innovative use of digital technology at large, artificial intelligence in particular, and generative artificial intelligence more specifically to address some of the prominent urban and regional development challenges. So it's good to hear the state of the art, what seems to work, what doesn't seem to work or requires specific attention, and to see together, the kind of enabling conditions that can be put in place to unlock the potential or to address some of the potential pitfalls. So we'll start with our keynote speech, whom I understand is online. I'm very, very honored to have with us Professor Ricardo Vinuesa. We see you on the screen. Technology seems to work. You're Associate Professor and Vice Director of the KTH Digitalization Platform within the KTH Royal Institute of Technology, based in Stockholm, Sweden. And you recently published a very interesting paper on AI and the SDGs in the Nature journal. You have the floor, Professor. 10 minutes. Tell us what we should be aware of on this topic of AI and SDGs.
Thank you very much for the introduction. I would like to, so you will share my slides. That's perfect. It's a pleasure for me to be able to talk to you today, and unfortunately I couldn't be in person, but I'll be happy to follow up any discussions afterwards. I'm going to be speaking about the role of AI in achieving the SDGs. As it was mentioned in the introduction, this is a very trendy topic, but we want to really go away from the hype and really focus on the science and the potential of this technology. This is research funded by the ERC, the European Research Council, and also Digital Futures in Sweden. So we can go to the next slide. And we can go a few steps ahead, because then we will have different parts of this slide. I understand that everybody here is familiar with the Sustainable Development Goals, which are the 2030 Agenda of the United Nations established in 2015. They're, of course, a shared blueprint for peace and prosperity for everybody. So the SDGs range a very broad range of topics, from ending poverty to climate and environmental issues, which means that any study on this can really, requires a very broad range of knowledge areas. The SDGs include 17 goals and 169 targets, which are considered as sub-goals that are more specific than the 17 bigger ones. So in the next slide, we can actually formulate our question. This is now around 6 years ago. I was having lunch with a colleague here at KTH, and we were wondering whether there was any published evidence for AI acting as an enabler or an inhibitor for each of the targets. We realized that there was no research targeting this particular question. So we put together a very multidisciplinary team with basically areas of knowledge that could really span all these topics. And this effort resulted in an article in Nature Communications that you can see here at the bottom, where you can access all the examples and documents there. Today, I will give you some highlights. So in the next slide, we can see the team. We have a total of 10 people, 5 men, 5 women from all over the world, experts in engineering, in fundamental and applied machine learning, but also experts in ethics, in economy, biodiversity, cosmology, and also sustainability systems. So this really shows the broad range of knowledge that is required to really be able to tackle these very complex questions. If we go forward, we can see in the next slide, we can actually see how we split the 17 goals into 3 main areas: the goals that have to do with the society, with the economy, and with the environment. This way, we will be able to really see holistically the effect on all these areas. And if we go to the next slide, we can see the overall results. So the big picture is that 79% of the SDG targets can be positively affected by AI, and 35% of them can be negatively affected by AI. Now, this is, in principle, a positive message. That means that there is potential and there are possibilities. But we should not forget that the negatives can be very critical. So even one target being negatively affected can have cascading effects, leading to unintended, very negative consequences. Now, the SDG system is highly interconnected and complex. All these targets have connections, synergies, and trade-offs. Therefore, it's not obvious, it's not automatic that affecting one, we will have positive effects on others. And this is something that I will talk about a bit more later on in today's presentation. The environment is the area with, in principle, the highest positive potential of AI, with 93% of the targets with potential benefit. And the society is the area that, in principle, has the highest negative potential. So this is also something to keep in mind when performing our analysis. Now, if we go to the next slide, what we show here are the results. So a summary of the results. We can actually see on the left, for each of the SDGs, the percentage of targets that can be positively affected by AI, and on the right, the ones that can be negatively affected by AI. So if you see number 1, for example, on ending poverty, 100% means that all the targets from the SDG 1 can be positively affected by AI. Okay? So you can see the results for each of these SDGs. Now, in this article, we perform a very detailed analysis. If you go to Nature Communications and download the article, there is a supplementary material section where we provide for each of the targets a lot of references documenting the positive and the negative. So there are hundreds of examples there that you can find. Today, I will highlight just a few of them so you can get the general idea. But if you go there, you can see hundreds of examples of how this can actually be realized in practice. In the next slide, we explain that we basically took into account the strength of the evidence. So we analyzed through expert elicitation. So we had these 10 experts discussing over 2 years period, a wide range of references, mostly from the scientific literature and from the industry, so research projects of AI. And we classified all these references into 4 categories. A type of references are the ones with the strongest evidence and the easiest to generalize, and we gave them a ranking of 1. And going down to B type of references, which are the most speculative, these have a weighting factor of 0.25. So these have a lower score. So in the next slide, we can see the effect of taking into account the strength of the evidence. In this slide, you can see that there are 2 lines, the light color and the dark color. The light color is when we don't take into account the strength of the evidence, and the darker one is when we are actually weighting these results in terms of how strong is the evidence suggesting positive or negative effects. So by seeing the reduction between the light color and the dark color, we can actually see areas of gaps, of research gaps. Turns out that the positive effects of AI on the economy is a research gap, and the negative effects of AI on the environment and the society are also research gaps. So these are areas where more research is needed. There's a bit of a speculative science, but we should really dig deeper to fully harness all the potential. Moving forward to the next slide. Generally, 2 big examples. When there is a positive effect, it's because we have a technology enabled by AI that was not possible before. For example, in the case of SDG 1 on ending poverty, it's possible now to use satellite data and analyze that with deep learning to detect regions of poverty, and that helps us a lot. Most of the inconvenience and the disadvantages come when we have uneven access to the resources, which can exacerbate existing inequalities, and that has a negative impact on SDG 10 on inequalities. Next slide. Now, something that we are doing now, what I talked about is an article that we published now 4 years ago. What we're doing now is use natural language processing, basically large language models, to develop policy. So this is the idea. We are analyzing with large language models hundreds of thousands of documents. Of course, experts can only read hundreds maybe, but not hundreds of thousands. With AI, we can look at all these documents and analyze synergies and trade-offs among those targets. As I mentioned before, those targets are connected, and many of those connections are hidden. They're not obvious. We can assume and we can think that, of course, if I want to end poverty, I may need more food and more resources, and that will have a negative impact on the environment, right? That's an obvious negative connection between the SDGs. But there are non-obvious ones that can be found through large language models. We're using all this information to be able to develop new policy decisions and new optimized investments for policy by taking into account all this information. In the next slide, we're going to see how this can be visualized. And this is a tool by the European Commission where we are looking on the left at synergies. So how one target can be connected positively with many others. And on the right, trade-offs. So how one target can be connected negatively with many others. This is essential to really find this information in order to make optimal policy decisions. And in the next slide, we can talk a little bit about cities, which is, of course, the main topic of today. SDG 11 on sustainable cities is a very special one because all the targets of this SDG can be positively affected by AI. This also has implications on SDG 13 on climate action. Turns out that 800,000 people die in Europe only every year due to pollution in cities. And we have now the opportunity with AI to use this technology to properly measure and fix some of these problems associated with pollution in cities. If we go to the next slide, I'm showing you a very broad schematic of how we are doing this technically. On the left, you can see a simulation, a computer simulation of the air around a building. Yeah, this is the velocity around the building. And what we are doing is use sparse measurements. So we measure in different points of the city, and using deep learning from those sparse measurements, from these points that are far apart, we can reconstruct in 3D the volume of air, the temperature, and also the pollution levels. This is very important because this allows us to go from very distant measurements to three-dimensional representations of the city where we can see exactly where the peaks of pollution are. And using this information, we can have decisions in terms of traffic optimization, in terms of development, of new neighborhoods, in terms of urban planning. So this is really a technology that is giving us a complete breakthrough in terms of what we can do for sustainability in cities. If we go to the next slide, we can show you a little bit more in detail how we do this. At the end of the day, these are the technical aspects. We have very detailed flow simulations in cities and very advanced deep learning technology to make these predictions, leveraging the data and the physical knowledge that we have about this particular phenomenon. And in the next slide, we have basically my conclusions. I just will leave them there, and I will give time for questions and discussion.
Thank you very much, Professor Vinuesa. A really interesting presentation. And for those of you that have not read the paper, I do invite you to read the paper. Maybe we can put the link online if it's not already done, and we'll certainly put the link to the summary record of this roundtable. Maybe we can take a few questions if there are some, based on what you've just heard. If you're in the room and wish to ask Professor a question, you just put your nameplates like that, for those of you who are not used to OECD setting, and in a way that I can actually read it and know the institution that is behind. If you are online and you've put some question in the chat or Q&A function, then Lawrence, signal yourself and take the floor and shout. But maybe I'll ask one question, either to get us started or to transition to the next phase, and we'll have more questions in the discussion at the end. Professor, and that's, well, actually two questions. The first one is the extent to which, based on this granular analysis that you've done, goal by goal and target by target, you believe that the benefits of AI outweigh the costs, if I can say so. Do you have a view on that? I mean, are you, because you have this 78% and 35%, but that's sort of static approach based on the goals as they're listed. But overall, when you know that a conversation on GPT is a bottle of water, and I could go on with many of the environmental externalities, have you come up to a conclusion on that? And then the second related question is the extent to which, in the exchanges you've had and whether you've interacted with policymakers, because you insisted this is to guide decisions and policy choices, etc., you think that there is really a data gap today that needs to be bridged through AI? I mean, is this something that you perceive in global north, global south as being the main bottleneck, you know, to make that transition on the SDGs? So maybe go ahead with that, and then I'll see if there are a few more questions. Otherwise, we'll transition and then get back to you at the end.
These are excellent questions at the core of the discussion. The first one on the environmental cost of AI, this is something that we have thought about lengthy. We actually have an article in Nature Climate Change where we advocate the uses of AI for sustainability in a way that AI itself is sustainable. So there are different strategies in which you can make these models more environmentally friendly. And the first one is use the simplest model that you can. Don't try to go for a very large model with a lot of data, which will blindly try to optimize things. Sometimes these large language models and these very large ChatGPT applications, you could do similar things with simpler, smarter models. They're not the smartest models. They work well because you use a lot of data and put a lot of parameters on them. But simpler models can do something pretty much at the same level of performance. So one is to think and embed any knowledge that you have about the phenomenon that you're trying to model. So for example, when we look at cities and the fluid mechanics of the cities, we know a lot about fluid mechanics. So we try to put in our models as much as we know about the system. This means that the model will be cheaper because it doesn't need to learn the physics. The physics are already there. And it doesn't need to use data to improve its accuracy because the physical knowledge will help it, will guide the model towards better performance. So I would argue that one key to control the environmental impact of these AI models is to really develop smarter models, not be blind and use thousands of GPUs, but try to use the physics and the knowledge that we have to try to enhance these models. Transfer learning is another area that is helping us significantly in developing more efficient and smarter models. But if you keep these principles in mind, the benefits certainly outweigh the cost. Well, the second question, which is also extremely relevant, which has to do with data, there is two aspects here. One, and we're doing a lot of work on this in my research group. So there's the SDG agenda focuses on social effects and also some environmental effects. There is, of course, the framework of the planetary boundaries, which are essentially environmental quantities that can be measured. And now we're using AI to try to reconcile and try to bring together the goals that affect the society, the environment, and also the economy. So we really need to be able to streamline all these agendas by using objective data in order to have the best possible outcome. When it comes to data from the north and the south, we have several research studies basically pointing at this problem, that there is less data available in the south, and that's going to bias these systems. There is, however, quite some statistical frameworks involving multi-fidelity, which can really help us. When you have data of different levels of fidelity and of different levels of detail, you can try to compensate and use some data of higher detail to compensate for the lack of data in other areas of the planet, for example. So I believe that this multi-fidelity framework can help us to try to have a better representation of the whole planet and everybody on the planet. But of course, the first step is to be aware of these issues and these limitations. The second one is to try to come up with smart models and basically more nuanced techniques to be able to represent all these differences, basically.
Wonderful, thank you very much. We have 2 questions in the room, so we'll take them back to back and then go back to you for a joint response. So maybe 3 questions in the room. I have the Committee of the Regions, I think the State of Paraná, right? And then the Joint Research Center, is this correct? So Committee of the Regions, go first, and if you can introduce yourself also.
Thank you. I'm Audrey Parizel. I work on SDG localization in the European Committee of the Region, together with regions in the EU and cities as well. It is the first time I come across your research, and I would like to thank you and the OECD and the Basque government for this, because this is, I think this would be extremely useful to read your results. And from my perspective, what needs to be done now that in Europe, at least, regions and cities are in the infancy of the planning and adoption of their AI strategies. And this is the right moment to show your results. So on a dissemination, I think for me now, the important thing to do is dissemination of your results and to take a very pedagogic stance. Have you done a sort of really short, simplified fiche of negative impacts for each SDGs and positive impacts for each SDGs that could easily be disseminated across Europe and the world? That would be extremely useful, I think, at this stage of AI development. Thank you.
Thank you. Hold your breath. Ricardo will take the 3 questions and I'll go back to you for a bundled response. I now hand over to Felipe from the State of Paraná in Brazil.
Okay. Professor Ricardo, first, congratulations on your presentation. I'm Felipe Farhat from the Paraná State, southern Brazil. So I was talking to my colleague Julia during our long trip to Donostia, and about we are talking about we are facing Brazil, the capital of the Rio Grande do Sul state, with serious problems with flood, and how many families and how much money were spent, and they are suffering for that. And we know that artificial intelligence, I think, works a lot with data, but not with creativity and imagination. So if we could invite you to imagine that we were here in another moment, in another time, with all the goals nearly achieved, how could be our world if you imagine we are here in this time? So how many lives could be better? How much money we could save? How much money we could save from the health part and the security and everything? So my question is, could we, with the artificial intelligence, produce some models to present to our politicians this new world, how it's important to finance, because we heard a lot that there is no money, we have problems with funding, but we know money we already have in all parts. We have in our municipalities, in our state, in our countries. But we need to invite people to understand if we really invest, if Porto Alegre has invested in the right things, they won't be suffering and they won't need to spend a lot of money. And it's not just about money, it's a lot of families suffering about this. I think it's clear, my question? Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Felipe. And then over to the Joint Research Center of the European Commission.
Thank you very much. Indeed, a big thanks for the very insightful presentation. My name is Iraklis Stamos, and I'm working for the Joint Research Center of the European Commission. Now, as you've shown on your own slides, we also work on the interlinkages of the SDGs. This visualization tool that you have there is developed by the European Commission. And interestingly, what we see is there is a big differentiation when it comes to the interlinkages depending on the territorial level. So if you study them at the national level or the international level, it's very, very different on what happens between regions or between cities. So my question to you is on whether you feel that there is potential from large language models to actually territorially grasp the interlinkages, given that also the majority of the literature that out there, which you're also studying, is on at the national level. And it's very, very different when you're studying the data which are disaggregated from a national level to another territorial level, regional or other, rather than studying the data that are coming from different territorial levels. So my question is whether you feel that AI is there yet in studying such an interesting and pressing topic that is the interlinkages of the SDGs. Thank you.
Thank you, Irakli. So a question on how you communicate or make user-friendly access to your findings, one on whether AI can help devise the ideal world and how you advise policymakers on that front. The last one on granularity, and then you may have seen online as well a question in relation to your appetite to partnerships on a science on a citizen science program, a stakeholder that has developed a citizen science app that captures a lot of the localized environmental data, whether there's eagerness to explore that path. Ricardo, you have the floor. Let you be concise, and then we'll move to the second part of the session.
Thank you. And thank you for the great questions. Regarding dissemination, I think it's an excellent point. I actually have a YouTube channel where I record many dissemination videos in a more accessible level to try to share with the public. And I try to be very active in the media, radio interviews, TV interviews, to try to make this accessible. I really like your idea about short examples of positive and negatives. And that's something that we will follow up. I think that's a fantastic, fantastic idea. Regarding the second question, I think it's also a very good point. I believe the question is which goals we should be targeting, right? Because the SDG agenda has its limitations, the planetary boundaries has their limitations. So the idea is to first create a streamlined agenda combining the synergies and trade-offs among those. And then, because the system is so intertwined between economy, environment, and society, to make predictions, as you very well said. And we can actually show that by investing in the environment, we're saving in economically in the long term as well. And we're also saving in lives, and in quality of life. So to make those forecasts and those predictions, I think that would be extremely valuable. And that's something that we can do with AI. Regarding the JRC, we actually had a meeting with them yesterday. So we were discussing some of these issues and some of these points. So it's great that we are very well aligned. I think your point about granularity is important. AI has access to such a broad range of documents. So we can actually analyze documents that are relevant to more local policy and issues and include this in our analysis. And I believe that there is a smart way to weigh in, because of course, the more national level conclusions should also have an imprint, no, on the local ones. So by training our models with both local and national and even more global information, we can come up with a quite good model that can perform well both in a national and a local level. So we have the data and the capacity of the models to become general enough to leverage all this information. Regarding my appetite for partnerships, and I read the question before, I think this is an excellent initiative to reach out and to also be able to have more concise and concrete impact, no, on this potential. So I'm very happy to discuss further. Please feel free to reach out and we can talk more, absolutely.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Professor. And I understand you can stay with us an extra 40, 45 minutes. So that's great. So we'll move to the second part and then maybe you have additional questions in the end as well, or yourself questions for some of the panelists. So we now turn to the second part, which is about giving different institutions the opportunity to also share what they're doing in this field of AI and localization from their different expertise standpoints, and how they think we can go the extra mile advancing this localization agenda using AI. We'll start with the OECD. I'll invite my colleague Aline Mata to share a bit the state of the thinking in the OECD on that matter, and then we'll go to 4 panelists in 2 rounds. First, asking them to give a bit of an overview of what they're doing that may be of interest to this community, and then in a second time going more to the substantive areas that AI can help support. Aline, you have the floor.
Thank you, Aziza. So I think what we're going to explore now resonates with many of what we heard from Professor Ricardo, but also from your questions. So basically what we have here is the ongoing thinking and what we have been discussing at the OECD. So we have 5 key points to share with you. And the idea is that we can build upon also from the examples that the panelists are going to share with us today. So the first point is really just to bring to you how the OECD defines artificial intelligence. So basically, the organizations understand that this AI is actually a system based on a machine-based system that can generate outputs to influence different environments. Of course, there are different AI systems that can vary considering the levels of autonomy, also the question of adaptation when we talk about deployment. The second point is that AI is not new. What is new about AI is actually how it's widespread and how we are adopting this in a very high speed, and how we are actually, how this is actually promoting a reevaluation of how our organizations and institutions work, and also how we use data. The third point is on how AI technologies are part of the concept of smart cities, and here we need to understand a people-centered approach of smart cities, and how this this technology can optimize decision-making and service delivery. The fourth point is related to how AI can help to transform urban life, and this we're going to hear from some of you today, how you have been using AI to improve your various urban services. And when we talk about the advanced solutions that we can implement on the urban services, we need to take into account the variety of applications. For example, if we talk about mobility, AI can help to optimize traffic flow and public transport. In security, it can enhance surveillance and emergency response. In education, just to give a final example in this slide, it can support personalized learning and also improving efficiency. Now, the second slide, what we want to bring to you is more related to the role of AI in achieving the SDGs. And here we also have a couple of points to share with you. Of course, as we saw, and we are going also to discuss this in the second and the third session today, local and national governments continue to face challenges to achieve the SDGs, and this technology can help to leverage the potential to advance on its implementation, particularly when we take into account, as Professor Ricardo was mentioning to us, how this can help to tackle poverty, climate action, hunger, and many other SDGs. Now, the second point here, and also resonates with what Professor was mentioning, is really on how we can use AI as an enabler to improve areas as healthcare, education, and environmental management. But we cannot ignore that this kind of technology can also have a negative impact. So in this case, this research that we just saw showed that we can have a negative impact in almost 35% of targets. And so we need to take this into account and really improve in monitoring and evaluation. Now, the next point is on how AI can optimize infrastructure, public services, and resource management, and how this can help to accelerate the SDGs. And then the final point, because even if you look, AI has many benefits to offer, we cannot ignore the potential drawbacks. These we need to take into account that this can cause, for example, displacement of works, increase the carbon emissions from running large-scale AI models, and also amplification of existing digital divides and inequalities, both within cities, regions, and countries, and between them. Now, it's really crucial that we take these points into account to maximize the positive impact of AI. So in the final slide, what we are just going to present to you now is some final policy considerations and some ways forward that we have been discussing at the OECD. So the first point is really that the extent to which AI benefits urban sustainable development remains uncertain. So this also resonates with what we heard in the keynote speech today, that we need to further monitor and evaluate. Also, ethical concerns such as privacy, bias, discrimination really needs to be addressed to ensure AI can benefit all citizens. The third point is related to effective data governance. This is a field that the OECD has been working quite a lot. And how this is essential also for AI deployment. So here we are talking not only about operability, but also safety and understanding citizens' needs. Now, how can the OECD further support your work? What can we do better to continue contributing to all the advancements that you have been doing? So far, we plan to continue to provide comprehensive policy analysis, to continue supporting capacity building and knowledge sharing. We have been also discussing to create an AI accelerator to localize the SDGs, to foster sustainable urban development. So this somehow is going to include taking stock of the knowledge and best practices that exist, trying to understand better the regulatory framework and the data governance, exploring some ideas on a maturity model of development that can access cities' readiness to use, absorb, and have the capacity to use AI. And a final point on advancing the knowledge sharing and the peer learning process, not only in the roundtables as we're organizing here, but having a continued discussions with you. I am already 1 minute over time, so I'll stop here. Thank you, Aziza. Back to you.
Thank you, Aline. I'm not an AI, I can give you a minute. Thank you so much. Let's now move to our experts and panel members to hear from their respective work. We try to make this multi-stakeholder. We have a think tank, we have a managing authority in Spain, we have a mayor, and we have a donor representative. And I think this idea is to combine also different perspectives on what they're doing in their respective fields. And my pleasure to start with Hubert Béroche, who's the founder of Urban AI, lecturer at Sorbonne Business School, and who's been very active in this field. Hubert, tell us what you're up to and any insights to set the scene.
Thank you. Thanks, Aziza. Thanks to the OECD and the Basque government for the invitation. It's a great pleasure of being here today to present what we are doing at Urban AI and discuss the use of AI to localize SDGs. So indeed, my name is Hubert. I'm the founder of Urban AI, which is a company dedicated to the emerging field of urban artificial intelligence. And our mission basically is to urbanize artificial intelligence. Why do we want to urbanize artificial intelligence? And it's actually quite related to the need to localize SDG, because we strongly believe that actually AI has not been made for cities and can in a way be against city. So maybe I will use an example to be quite clear on it. But just before this, as it has been said before, we have to clearly understand that AI has not been born with ChatGPT. It's much more older. It's been mainly developed by digital players, digital leaders for digital environments. And I'm saying this because it's quite important, because those AI have parameters that are not intrinsically made for physical, complex, open environments such as cities. To give a very concrete example, if we take the case of autonomous vehicles, when you have an error code on an autonomous vehicle, it's basically killing lives. It's basically damaging infrastructures. And when you have an error code on a digital platforms such as Netflix, or on a social media such as Instagram, here it's just pushing the wrong information. So maybe you will not buy the good items. So you are seeing here a quite a very powerful difference between cities and digital environments. And AI has first been made for those digital environments, which is very different for this reason, but also many others, than physical spaces. And this is what we can see, basically, that when you have autonomous vehicles that are damaging infrastructures, people, then you are also damaging the trust that is at the root of your social contract. So our role at Urban AI is really to take into consideration those elements and to understand how we can urbanize artificial intelligence. And I can see that I'm already out of time, but maybe I can share another very quick example. So we recently released a report on generative AI for urban governance. We've been doing this with the Métropole du Grand Paris, and we've interviewed several global experts, including experts from the city of Barcelona, city of Boston, and many others. And here again, we can see that more and more municipalities or public administrations, local governments want to use generative AI, including chatbot, because of the hype of ChatGPT. But here again, what we say is be careful, because you are not just OpenAI. Like in OpenAI, when they are using their ChatGPT and that the AI hallucinates, maybe it's okay because it's a private company. But you are a public organization. So if your AI hallucinates and is giving a false information, you are damaging your trust, which is at the core of your relationship with your citizens. And maybe also if you are using a chatbot on digital platform, you will exacerbate a digital divide. So here again, it's just to show that we need, even when we are talking about autonomous vehicles, chatbot, generative AI, those technologies, we need to urbanize them to take into consideration the complexity of cities and the political dimension of municipalities.
Thank you so much, Hubert. Very relevant points, which I'm sure will raise interest during the discussion. This need to put an urban lens at these technologies that were not initially designed for the uses they're expanding these days. Let me now turn to Barbara Pons, who's the CEO of Barcelona Regional, the urban development agency of the city of Barcelona, for her preliminary insights. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. We were asked two questions in this roundtable. The first one was what we were doing, and the second one was what were the main barriers. I don't know if we are supposed to answer both of them. Just the first one? Okay. So let me tell you briefly about Barcelona Regional, which is an agency that has a story of 30 years now, that was created for the City Council of Barcelona, also the metropolitan region, to deal with the challenges in continuing building the infrastructure after the Olympic Games in Barcelona. So it's a strategic planning agency that has gained complexity during the 30 years of history, and which has gained a reputation for being one step ahead of innovation. So as it was said before, we were using software or algorithms or artificial intelligence in early stages since at least 15 years ago, almost 20, since 2005 and 6, when we began to implement softwares for monitoring air quality, that are learning softwares that can predict also air quality with 3 days advance. So this is just one example. We deal with all the aspects of planning, mobility, climate change, air quality, infrastructure, urban planning, of course. And many of them have to do with helping the public administrations to kind of make real, to implement the welfare state or the public services that are aligned with many SDGs, such as, for example, housing or access to clean water or energy. So in this frame, what we are using now, for example, we're using dealing with SDG 7, affordable and clean energy. We use artificial intelligence to monitor solar radiation on buildings, for example, to model the city with 3D modeling and then evaluating solar radiation to help plan the better use of solar energy generation in the city. Or we also use satellite images with algorithms for detection of roofs that are also apt for these type of installations. And also we analyze the energetic performance of buildings to create projects and climate scenarios on how the performance are going to be also from the outside and the inside of the buildings. If we change natural gas to electric devices, what will the energy consumption of different neighbors or the whole city? So we can begin to plan and monitor and project this type of scenarios. We also, related to SDGs 13, climate action, and also 7, related with energy transitions and mobility, we use neuronal networks to forecast air quality, as I was saying. And from the origins in 2005 now, we are beginning to, we're building on the capacity of modeling and making scenarios also for blending the mobility park of the city and the metro area of Barcelona with the climate scenarios that we are developing for the city with different time frames. Also, we work with SDG 6, clean water, and also 14, life below water, for air quality of water in the network, in the sewage network. We monitor in different points of the network, so we can identify when there's a spill or any problems, and we can predict upstream where the problem is. So we can model also, it's all in this line of modeling and knowing how the networks are performing and working. And also we're using artificial intelligence. This will be more related to SDG 11, which is resilient cities in general and mobility. We have cameras in different interventions we have done in different streets of the city. For example, in Barcelona, we developed a strategy, the super block strategy. We developed green access. So we are using cameras in this access to monitor how mobility is evolving in these areas. We identify also preserving privacy and with all the prevention methods. We identify objects that move in the streets and identify whether there are persons, people, bikes, or scooters or other types of mobility. So we can quantify in different time frames, and we can also predict traffic patterns in these areas. We are also working in a twin city model with the Barcelona Supercomputing Center of the city. They are working with the city in this twin model of the city, but also they are developing with another network of supercomputing centers, which is called the Planet Twin, to model the climate of the planet. So we want to develop a pilot so we can apply in Barcelona what the climate will be 2035, 2050, and see how this will influence or the needs or identify heat patterns, rain patterns that we can better adapt public services. And well, I will continue later. Thank you very much.
Wonderful, thank you very much. Going back to what Hubert was asking earlier or suggesting either, do you have a chat bot in in the agency, or not yet?
No, we don't.
No plan yet.
We play with it though. We'll see.
That's good. Interesting. Great. Thank you very much. Let me now turn to our mayor guest, Luisa Salgueiro, mayor of the city of Matosinhos in Portugal. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be, an honor to be here with you. About Matosinhos, we are localized in Porto metropolitan area. We are the 5th biggest municipality in Portugal. And recently, in April, we became the first Portuguese local authority to use an artificial intelligence in customer services. We present Maria. It is the first virtual assistant using artificial intelligence at local authority level. The website's first page was redesigned to make access to simpler and more effective information, focusing on the interaction through the Maria avatar and search. Both solutions are based on AI technology, which has the ability to learn with information that municipality provides on the website. People interaction through voice interfaces, such as Siri or Alexa, and Maria represents a significant advance, offering personalized answers and services to the needs of the citizens, and serves in the language in which the question was asked, many different languages, which makes it a strong tool for social inclusion. Maria uses ChatGPT technology to respond. However, it is trained with the information on the local authority website, and it is instructed to maintain the local authority context. As part of the modernization of the online presence, more focused on the citizen and the service provided, Matosinhos also created an innovative intelligence service directory, which brings together in simple languages all the services provided by the municipality. Citizens' experience is personalized using machine learning technology and recommendation engines. This revolutionary platform aims to eliminate bureaucratic barriers and facilitate citizens' access to municipal services, offering clear information, personalized guidance, and intuitive functionalities. All municipality services are available through actions such as request, consult, and pay. To sum up, Maria answers all the questions a citizen asks in a simple, intuitive way, being able to use various solutions asking questions that are answered in any language. Using machine learning and recommendation engines, Maria searches all available information, and this way we are serving people in a simple and inclusive way, being closer to people, making them interact and serving them better. Also, in another way, we were the first city to develop the country's first technology-free zone based on the digital transition combined with the decarbonization agenda and sustainable development goals that offer us the opportunity to lead in the maritime economy, mobility, creative industries, and information and communication technologies clusters. We will be the local where the autonomous vehicles will be tested in Portugal. We are able to be the first place where we can do it. Finally, I wish to say that we are very committed to the modernization and the use of all possible innovation and digital tools that allow us to achieve better services, efficient and better to serve the population. For the municipality, it is important and decisive because people are more familiar with using these tools, and we have to accompany this to be close to the people. We maintain the more traditional models for the older population that is less familiar with these tools, but we continue to consolidate this strategy, which is the future, and the local authorities that are close to the people must be up to this challenge. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Mayor. A very concrete example of generative AI. You call it Maria in Matosinhos, and the French government has just...
It is the most popular name in Portugal.
I was going to ask how you... The French government has just released one Uber, you know, it's called Albert, you know, and I don't know if it is the most commonly used name and how this was...
It used to be the most common name in Portugal. So it's a woman, so we just call it Maria, and it's became testing and became very popular already.
That's very interesting.
I think that even older people like to talk with Maria, so it's a chat box that it's become a great success.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mayor. Let me now turn to Peter Saylor, who's head of project with the International Smart Cities Network and GIZ in Germany. I think I saw Peter over where? Ah, voila. Yeah, I got confused. Peter, please, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Aziza, and thank you, OECD and the Basque government for having us today here. And I'm representing GIZ, one of the implementing agencies of the German government for development cooperation. So when we always discuss with our partners, of course, we keep in mind that the technological advances as such must keep in mind the purpose of what they are being used for in order to raise the quality of life for the city's residents. So that's why, and one of the large portions of our work is a capacity development and capacity building. So when it comes to that, we also focus on students. Firstly, because most likely they're more tech savvy, and second, they still have their entire professional career ahead of them. So this is where it really makes where the technological change can really make an impact and a long-lasting impact. So that's why we do work together with universities and their close interaction with municipalities in order to overcome silo thinking and, of course, enable interdisciplinary approaches and thought patterns. So when it's in this regard, of course, AI also is one of the topics we look into our cooperation, and then, of course, the requirements for algorithms of AI. There must be ensured that those models are non-discriminatory and, of course, inclusive in order to take in account the respective needs of different cities or different residents of the cities, but also look into the requirements of cities of different sizes. And so we can make sure there is all the different aspects such as age, ethnicity, and financial status don't prevent any participatory elements in our cooperations. And that's why, of course, data sets, they do reflect human choices on what to collect and how to categorize data and how to process it actually further down the planning process. So therefore, we must look into some objective AI systems, which is what guides us in our cooperation with the university. To sum it up, we do see this, our efforts here, as one part of participatory planning. Besides all the established and proven way before AI came up and all digitalization issues emerged. And there's just, let me speak out an invitation to any topics, any ideas you have, you want to look into. We do work with a global network of universities and looking, of course, for ideas to work into. To sum it up, of course, everyone happily is invited to approach us, and I leave the rest for the next question. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Peter. We'll go for a second round, and then meanwhile, I'm inviting those of you who are online to flag if you have questions or good practices or experience, or including lessons from failures to share. Use the Q&A function and the chat to that effect. We're collecting them here and make sure our speakers have a chance to echo them, and same for Professor Ricardo, who's still online with us. So let's go back The second round is much more practical, based on your experience and knowledge, any kind of guidance or opportunity or untapped potential you see in relation to AI and the SDGs. And I think related to that also, if you identify niches or areas where maybe the policy science interface can also be strengthened, because that's very much in line with what Peter just said, the core function of this forum and this platform to make the best of the analysis, the data, the guidance, the evidence of what works, and to build a bridge to those ultimately in charge of implementing and making this happen, whether we're talking about policymakers across levels of government or practitioners. So any tip you see or any gap you identify that connections and networking in this roundtable can help a bridge is welcome. Over to you, Hubert.
Yeah, thanks for this question. And indeed, I think the political dimension of urban AI and the use of AI to localize SDG is especially important. And here it's very related to what Professor Ricardo Vinuesa just shared. So the fact that at the heart of localizing SDG, we have synergies and trade-off. And maybe I will use a very concrete example we've been working on with the municipalities who wanted to use AI to solve SDG 14 and 15. So basically to improve urban biodiversity through protecting bat population by mitigating light pollution. So basically, how can we use different models that can adapt dynamically to bat population to reduce as much as possible the light pollution and to make them in a way thrive by creating what we call a night corridor. So that's a very concrete example where AI can be used to solve an SDG. The issue is that when you start working on it and having a deep look on it, we gradually saw that by doing this, we were inhibiting another SDG, which is SDG 5, about gender equality. Because if we are reducing light for bat population, we are augmenting insecurity feeling among women, because you had many urban studies that showed that we need to create better places, which include better lighting to improve safety feeling. So here you have this trade-off that basically Professor Ricardo Vinuesa was highlighting. And you can see that by using AI, you are bringing political dimension, because it's a political question. It's not a technical issue, even if it's not quite easy to do it. But at the end, your trade-off is, okay, which SDG do you want to work on? And I think it's very important to stress it out, because at the root of the question, it's really the social contract you are working on. And if you don't take it into consideration, if you are doing it with opacity, you have the risk to have what we call AI backfire. So the fact that residents and populations will move against your project and your city. So really, that would be maybe my main recommendation, that this is what we do. This is how we help our partners. When you are working on using AI to localize SDG, keep in mind this political dimension and this trade-off it might involve.
Thank you, Hubert. Over to you, Barbara.
Yes, thank you. Yes, building on what Hubert just said, and what Peter was also saying about capacity building, I would point out that I think it's very interesting this use of AI in the built environment for public administrations. That would be the context we work in. We're helping public administrations to better inform the decisions for building infrastructure, which is in the real world, and combine digital capacities. So it's a very specific and complex environment to apply. So in order to advance with the barriers that we find, I would point out that these two things are very needed: to work with capacity building with students, with universities, with the students that are more technological and more used to this AI, because in public administrations, we have this conflict with public servants that probably came into service 20, 30 years ago and need to be adapted. So how to incorporate this flexibility and this new know-how and new people into the forefront of the public administration and help them. So to create these environments, and I think this is one of the challenges, to create environments of people, of humans that would work with these technologies as an extension, as a tool, to create these groups of teams that can help public administrations. It's very relevant because we need to implement these new technologies. We need to also make this flexible and new ways of organizing innovation inside public administration, which is one of the main challenges. So that would be one of the first barriers we need to overcome. The second one would be this to work with this prevention with AI, because it's in the digital world, but it really affects hardware, as the example of the autonomous vehicle is very clear, how a bad decision on a car or a hacker on an autonomous car system can really provoke real deaths and real problems, whereas the platform, the service platform of a company, if it doesn't work, maybe it's just a few hours of bad service, but not any death. So this combination needs to be also worked out. And I would point out another third challenge now that we have European elections coming up, and it's the funding of these innovations oriented to the welfare and to the implementation of the SDGs. We in Europe, we are very proud of our welfare state, and we provide good performance of many SDGs related to the social aspects, but the finance of the welfare is not guaranteed in the next future, because we are in a context of we have wars in our borders, as you would say at the beginning. We need to invest more in peace and security, as we said, and maybe that will mean that we need to be much more efficient in how we provide public services. So this is where we really need to invest in a smart way in improving how we deliver in a more efficient and more finance viable way are the same public services, or even better, that we have today in healthcare, in the building of cities, in mobility, etc. So this complex finance situation in the next future is, I would say, is one of the barriers I want to point out. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Barbara. Over to you, Mayor Salguero.
Thank you. I believe AI technologies integrated with geographic information systems make it possible to design urban planning and cities management in a smart, healthier, and more sustainable way, so SDG 11. For example, in the creation of an intelligent transport system, in the study of mobility patterns, and in the management of green spaces. Also, AI can play a fundamental role in helping to combat climate change, SDG 13, and marine and terrestrial ecosystems, SDG 12, 13, 14, and 15, if you use it to optimize energy networks through the analysis of local consumption needs, SDG 7, and to monitor and manage waste or water resources, and also to provide identification of water contamination, SDG 6. So this assistant tool can identify vulnerable areas and optimize resource distribution, and can also be useful to mitigate inequalities and evaluate and design public inclusive policies, SDG 5 and 10. For example, to develop faster medical diagnosis, SDG 3, to adapt teaching to new realities and promote access to inclusive and equitable education, SDG 4, to analyze and monitor crime levels, and to promote local transparency, to implement a sustainable tourism system, or the analysis of economic trends, SDG 8. Despite all these potential opportunities, AI should be used to encourage and facilitate collaboration between sectors and between cities, to carry out sustainable transversal territorial plans and projects, so SDG 17. Some of the barriers of the use of AI may involve fear of the unknown and a lack of understanding of its potential. So it is important to demonstrate within organizations the role of AI in improving decision-making and process efficiency. Another limiting factor may be the availability or quality of data supporting AI tools. Inaccurate or missing data can harm the performance of AI models, so it is necessary for organizations to implement data management strategies and rigorous data control. Finally, the rapid development of AI must be supported by regulation instruments and have important oversight to allow sustainable development. Failure to adopt these measures may result in gaps of transparency, security, and ethical standards, leading to results in disagreement with the SDGs. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayor. And we close the loop with you, Peter.
Thank you. Yeah, in our work across the globe, when we do advise our partners to set up a framework to communitize the rules, the maximum possible scope of action for the data use, and what does it mean for the data users and the data owners, of course. So we always have to keep in mind that the people-centered urban development needs to harmonize the non-spatial perspective of the stakeholders on the one hand with the spatial perspective of the planners, also to translate technical into non-specialist concepts and language to get access to the information by the government, by the residents, and to dig deep into the context. And also, as language reflects culture, implementation gaps are not only intersectoral, but also in between stakeholders and experts. That means we need some transdisciplinary approaches, experts and stakeholders, in order to overcome these interdisciplinary approaches by experts and experts. So this is where we do see AI can help us in some way to translate and to be an honest butler, so to say, to provide some neutral and unemotionalized recommendations based on data sourced from a societal discourse on what kind of data can be used and how it can be used. And I chose this term neutral butler deliberately because we see artificial intelligence as a support and not as the main course of the planning. And this also brings me to what Barbara just said. Through the digitalization and with the help of, especially of AI, we see great opportunity to win back a population that has been somehow left behind in terms of planning in community development. Yet, I also have to drop a little bit of water into the wine because the final decision when it comes to planning always has to stay with us humans, and not we should not use artificial intelligence, so to say, as an excuse to hide necessary but unwelcome decisions, and thus avoid an honest discussion with the people involved or affected by any planning issues we implement.
Indeed. Thank you very much. So we'll now move to the discussion. We'll take 15-20 minutes so we can catch up with our break as well. Taking questions from the floor, so same rule. If you wish to ask a question to the speaker or add your own experience, you just raise your flag and you turn it this way so that I can read it. If you are having questions online, put them on the chat or on the Q&A. The team is sharing that here. And we'll start maybe with a question for you, Mayor, a question online, given that you are also the president of the National Association of Municipalities. Some of our participants seem well informed. There's actually a double question for you. The first one is, what mechanisms are being implemented implemented for replication and scalability of the solutions already implemented in your municipality? You mentioned Maria, so I guess the question is, are there other Marias in other municipalities, and how big is the wave within the constituency that you're leading? And then what is the evaluation that the Portuguese National Association of Municipalities is making about the extent to which the intention is reached? I mean, the fact that this is an enabler to, have you been able to document in a tangible way, or is it too early to say? So you have the floor. Let's start, and then signal yourself if you wish to take the floor.
Thank you. I'm glad that someone is very attentive and knows that I'm also the president of National Association of Municipalities. Well, Maria was the first chat box and the first virtual assistant to be presented by a local authority in Portugal 1 month ago, approximately, and now there is another one. So we became an example, and we are also working with other municipalities and the technical assistance in order to make it more useful in other and be used by other municipalities and other authorities. Of course, we don't want to be the only one to do it. And it's also a problem of financing, because we must have the means to build these answers. So the National Association is working on in order to make to have the possibility to give to the other municipalities the way to have national support. Because we are a big municipality, we have a good financial situation, and we could do it. It's not expensive, let's say. It's just a political decision, because it's not difficult to do it, but we must have the technical support, the right teams to do it. So what we are trying to do is to build a national observatory to know how is the situation of each of the 308 Portuguese municipalities, and then with the support of the money from Europe, from national budget, also to give the chance to any mayor, to everyone to do it. Of course, there is a big difference and inequality situation between many of the Portuguese municipalities. We have some that can have teams and means to build this kind of solutions, to have the AI included in their own process, but the most part of the Portuguese municipalities don't have this chance. So the National Association is working together very strongly with all of them in order to leave no one behind, no municipality behind. We must go further together in order to make the local level authorities also stronger, and to push them to be at the first level, to work together with national government and to give the chance, particularly in the most at the interior, those who have not such access to digital support, to AI solutions. So we want to keep this work together with all of them, and to have only one level, and to make them have, all of them have the chance to work also with this solution. So I'd like to thank the question, someone that is very well informed, and this person wants to work also with us. We need everyone, particularly in the regions we are not so committed with these goals.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Indeed, very important to know there are mechanisms in place to address varying levels of capacity across municipalities of different sizes. This is actually a discussion we've been having with Peter and GIC also in relation to smart cities at large, and the fact that often the usual suspects or the best performers, or at least those that we communicate, that we usually communicate around, are large metropolitan areas, and the question of how mid-sized cities in particular, in a context where they're gaining a lot of traction in many countries in the post-pandemic phase, are also reaping the benefits or unlocking the potential of their digital transformation. And that will be the topic of the fourth Smart City Roundtable that the OECD and GIZ will host on the 17th of September. You can pencil the date. We have a few stakeholders that have asked to take the floor. So I have in my list Smart City Congress, the EU Committee of the Regions, the Basque Center for Climate Change. If there are more, please signal yourself, and we'll start maybe with these three. If it's a question to one of the speakers, say it explicitly. If it's an experience, then just go ahead and please spell out your name if you've not taken the floor yet. So we'll start with the Smart City Congress.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's well, my name is Mons Badia. I come from the Smart City Expo World Congress. It's since 2011, it's the global event for cities that is one of the biggest one or the world's leading. Last year we had 24,000 attendees, and this year it will take place from the 5th to the 7th of November, and we're really delighted to welcome a co-organized session by the OECD. So truly thankful for that. As we have been saying today, we also talk about AI in the Congress, not as a mean but a means and to the SDGs. And some of the cases that we have showcased at the event have been, as Barbara was mentioning, the solutions in Barcelona for the solar radiation and detection of roofs. Other cases like in Buenos Aires, the chat box that initially was more focused on tests, vaccinations, and then it expanded to more social aspects, also even smart mobility. And also even more alternative cases like the case of Amsterdam that is using AI for smart and new materials for construction, even plant-based food. My question today would be to all of the speakers in general, and I really took one comment that Hubert said about how it is important for cities to remember at all times that they're not a company, certainly, and that the implementation of AI has to be treated with this delicacy because, you know, trust, citizen trust and participation is engaged on it. And I would like to ask if you have further examples of how governments are implementing these solutions in a way that is not only making citizens participative, but also, very importantly, taking care of the trust in the process.
Okay, Hubert?
Yeah, thanks for the very good question indeed. So there is several mechanisms that can be made to limited AI risk. For example, one thing that is working quite well, and I think actually the municipality of Barcelona is already working on it, is sandboxing your innovation and your AI and your chatbox. So the fact that you are first deploying an innovation in a limited and controlled environment, and then when you are sure that it's working well, you can use it, you can scale it. So that's first possibility to limit intrinsic AI risks. And then you can also work on improving citizen agency. And maybe this is something we could discuss more after, but basically it's indeed how you create not only engagement, but agency through AI. So how those technologies can be used through citizen assembly, through citizen data collection. So there is really new governance that can be created thanks to this technology and to empower citizens and bring trust at the heart of urban AI.
Thank you, Hubert. Over to the Committee of the Regions.
Yes, thank you. I'm still Audrey Parizel, and I wanted to share our feedbacks from our work with a different range of cities and regions in Europe. We are quite focusing on AI in the public sector. It's a bit more restricted, but it can heavily contribute to the SDGs. And what I wanted to share is that we are doing an opinion on AI in the public sector to input in the EU interinstitutional process, because we believe now that we have an EU AI Act, its implementation and budgetary decisions must really take into account regions and cities' experience. And throughout our work, what we came over is that, for example, there are regions like Saxony in Germany. They have developed their AI strategy, and they are fully aware that this this needs to be improved over time. So they are devising a guideline right now on the benefits of artificial intelligence in the state administration. And they really have this plan to update it regularly and to see internally how this can improve. There is also a really large need of training people within the administration. This was a core remark. And at the center of the strategy, we heard a lot the question of trust, that using AI can harm trust in the administration. But in the speeches that I come across with these EU regions, I see a very optimistic side, that they want to use AI to build trust in public administration, to devise more tailor-made solutions to their citizens, which are their customer. And here, for them, it's really a question of data governance, large pieces of data, high-quality data, and here, regions and big cities, capital cities, are much better armed for this. So we come back to this question of smaller cities, secondary cities, where we will have to somehow fund this through national governments from the EU level and other higher level. We see cities like Tallinn, Helsinki, Rotterdam. I've also examples from Dublin, which is using AI to analyze citizens' opinion on social media. The example of Amsterdam with using AI to discover illegal renting, or Copenhagen to detect cardiac arrest in emergency calls. So there are a lot of things going on, and it's very concrete. But the funding is really important, especially as in Europe, at least, the question of AI helping to deal with demographic change and delivering, providing public services to elderly people will be really key and a key benefit. Another small remark to end this is that actually AI can really be at the service of SDGs. I have seen regions and cities who are not specifically working on SDGs, adopting a very SDG governance style to deal with AI, really building cross services, bridges to help deal with data that is really fragmented across levels and horizontally as well. So it can also with universities, with businesses, with research institutions. So this really can bring them closer to SDGs. And we also need to have this click. For example, Piemonte region is going to be a key AI center in Italy, and it is also a region that is very active on SDGs, and we need to have these bridges for AI to deliver its full potential. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have on my list, and I'm closing here the list of speakers, the Basque Center for Climate Change, the University of Birmingham, and then we'll close with you and Habitat. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, good morning. I think I'm Jose from the Basque Center for Climate Change. We are working with IA from different perspective than the one that is being laid out here, but I think the important is to see that there are many efforts to use IA to promote the implementation of SDGs. But I guess the center of the question for me is the interoperability of data and models and knowledge, and also the notion of the data and the knowledge to be common goods that will allow the integration of all stakeholders and a collective effort to be deployed, which is more and more necessary at the local level. So in that regard, my question to the speakers is, are you being considering these aspects? I mean, how important integration and interoperability is, how important the fact that it should be spaces for open and collaborative efforts to use IA, and moving beyond machine learning and things like that, which is basically data mining, into something which is more close to integration, like machine rationing, for example, ontologies, common semantics, so that will allow to the policymakers to use more wisely the information that is available, which is massive, and to try to avoid some sort of bias, which things like what has been described here, like the chat GDP cannot detect, for example. So, I mean, IA has to be in a way well connected with how humans make decisions. Otherwise, we may have a risk of taking paths which will lead nowhere. And unfortunately, we don't have time to do that at this point in time. If we think, for example, in challenges like the climate change. So I think many of the things that are being said here can be better integrated if we really look for collective efforts, for ownership of stakeholders and policymakers of the technology and the use of the technology. And this is only possible if we really think that this is all a common good for society.
Thank you very much. That goes indeed to the root of good data governance. Anyone from the speakers wishes to react to that? Uber, Peter, Barbara. Barbara will go first, and then Uber and Peter. I'll ask you please to be brief.
Just very briefly, I think it's a very, very relevant point. The data as common good, the interoperability and integration, which is basically another of the big barriers that public administrations and other siloed organizations have to share data, to produce information, to produce or to really get to have well-informed decisions in the end. I think this is a very relevant point. I think it goes beyond the time that we have today, but totally, we spend a lot of efforts in the City Council of Barcelona. There are a lot of efforts to try to improve something that is not still working as it should. I think this is one of the main walls we have.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's really definitely an important question, especially on the climate change question. Maybe I will just add one thing, which is that actually technologies and infrastructures are quite ready to welcome open data and some open foundations. From my observation, one of the main issues is related to the fact that data is power and that organizations know it, private like public, and the organizations don't always want to share data. So you have this political issue behind this, but we have some technical foundation, but now we need, in a way, more goodwill on this topic, maybe.
Sir, and then the mayor.
Yeah, also let me add, of course, I mean, the communication with the society takes part or is quite an important aspect we focus on, besides the technical issues. And when it also comes to interoperability, of course, in an ideal case, all the different systems that produce data and all the sensors work together and communicate. But also what we saw is, especially when it is setting up data strategies and strategies in order to turn a city into a smart city, is the more time you use in a transparent and open discussion with the society and with the residents. It might be longer in the beginning, but in the long term, we actually save time and, of course, get a much more efficient outcome than you would have if you just present some produced strategy or technological solution.
Mayor Salguero?
Yes, I would like to share the problem that we have at Portugal, particularly at the local level, because we have many informations that are prepared by private companies, and they don't share with us, and they are not obliged for that interoperability. But at national level, the law provided that obligation. So we have to manage different systems, different bases, because they are the owner of the information, and we must give this step further in order to have a national legislation to make them obliged to share with us the data. So we are trying to manage everything together and to make this interoperability, but only with our own information. So what kind of solutions can we manage? It's very important and it's very difficult. At the European level, it is already been doing some legislation, but not enough. So we need to go to European Parliament and to national parliaments to talk with our national administration, because it is quite inequality, because for national level administration, they have the chance to get all the information for different companies. But when it comes to local level, we cannot go further, and we are always with these barriers. And it's quite amazing that when we are talking about AI and all these platforms, we still have to deal with this view that the companies have, that the information belongs to them and not to us. So it's very important to talk about this and to make the national politicals also be aligned with these strategies.
We'll take University of Birmingham and Habitat. I'll ask you please to be brief, a minute each. That way, Professor Vinuesa can make a short reaction. He has to leave at 11:30 sharp, and we need to go for a coffee break. So please go ahead, and then Shipra, and we go to you, Professor Antana.
Okay, thank you very much. It's fascinating. A quick one. Primarily to Peter, but a couple of others sort of mentioned the capacity building and kind of capability issues. I think it's a great idea to start with the students, but what about the existing workforce, and how do you identify the gaps and how you communicate that in terms of leadership and also technical gaps in capacity capabilities?
Of course, students is one part we focus on, but also when it comes to the introduction of new technologies, and this is what you also refer to, is of course there needs to be specific training, but it always depends on what actually, what kind of solution is necessary and what has to be applied, so to say, because I mean, talking about big cities, they have the capacity to do training themselves, maybe, but also in smaller towns and villages, there's a different need in training. So this always depends on, of course, the specific situation, and it is necessary once in a while, but also, of course, cannot be given a general answer on that one.
Thanks very much, Aziza, and thank you, colleagues. Great discussion. 2 quick points, one local, one global. On the local level, we are seeing for the last several years a massive movement towards voluntary local reviews and voluntary subnational reviews to report on the SDGs. And I think really this is the moment for us to ask, how can AI help cities to enhance the quality of data and the amount of data that can be processed by them to go into these voluntary local and subnational reviews. It will not provide all the solutions, especially for cities that don't have good quality data, but the data ecosystem beyond the government data can really help in enhancing the quality of VLRs and VSRs, and we can work together to provide guidance to cities to start piloting this sort of a model. The second global point that I have, UN Habitat is leading the development of international guidelines on people-centered smart cities under mandate from the United Nations and the General Assembly and the Habitat Assembly. And we're happy to include many of these experiences. Your roundtable in September can feed into the development of these guidelines, which will also be accompanied by the development of the first World Smart Cities Outlook that we are doing with Edinburgh Napier University. And again, I would welcome and invite OECD to partner with us on that. Thanks.
Thank you, Shipra. Over to you, Professor. You've heard a lot in the panel, in the Q&A session. Any reaction you wish to say, to share, or any final word before we move to the break?
Yeah, thank you for all the perspectives. I think this is a very interesting debate, and it's a type of dialogue that we should be having, and that also from the research point of view, we hope to contribute to. So I wanted to mention 2 points. One is that of interpretability. So if there is any hope that AI can help us, and this has been also mentioned by several speakers before, we need to have systems that are transparent and that can lead to accountability. That means that we need to have interpretable deep learning systems. And there are methods to do that. There are methods to have a system that is already trained and you can get interpretable outcomes in such a way that you know how inputs are connected with the outputs. So there is basically no excuse not to have interpretable systems. We should really develop the technology, and there are many ways of doing this. So interpretability is key. Along with interpretability comes communication strategies by governments. So in many cases, technology doesn't fully reach its full potential in the society because of a lack of a proper communication strategy. I think a good example of this is maybe the corona contact tracing apps that were not helping as much as they could have during the handling of the pandemic, because maybe the communication from the governments was not optimal. So I think if we want to really use this technology to help us, we need to also go along a proper communication strategy. And then about how to use AI and this technology to have a brighter future, I think a key aspect is that all these goals are interconnected. And this has been mentioned by several people as well. It's a very hard optimization problem. And the first step is to find those connections. And those connections are not obvious. So we need to really be able to, well, using large language models, using optimization, using reinforcement learning, really be able to connect all those goals so we can really understand their interconnections. And then we can optimize. We can really try to have decisions that can help without too many trade-offs, but really try to help all the benefits. There was this very nice example about the light in the night, no? That clearly was connecting SDGs in a very clear trade-off manner. Well, this is something that we can be aware of when we are optimizing at a larger level all the sustainability agendas. So key is to leverage AI for a better future for everybody, interpretable deep learning models, good communication strategies, and being able to optimize at a larger scale by accounting for all those interconnections. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And if you can all join me with a big round of applause for our 6 speakers. Fantastic session, great insights from all of you. We've heard AI is a tool, it's a means, not the end. It has an inward function to improve the wires of the public administration, the way governments work, get more efficient, deliver better outcomes for policies, but also an outward function, the way you work through your partnerships, your implementation projects with stakeholders. We've heard a lot about be mindful of trade-offs or unintended consequences. This needs to be mapped and understood and managed from the onset, a lot around capacity and granularity and the need to tailor actually mechanisms, responses, and solutions to place-based specificities and guidance on how to engage across the spectrum, a lot on youth, of course, but not only all generations, the workforce, but also beyond public authorities, academia, the private sector, and civil society. Thank you very much. This is the beginning of the conversation. We now slowly transition towards the break. I'll eat a little bit of the break time, if you allow me, and give you 20 minutes so that we have time to network and to refresh. We'll be back in 20 minutes, and we'll shorten a little bit the lunch break so that we start sharp on time in the afternoon and we're not holding delays for, especially because Stefano is in charge of the afternoon moderation. So he starts with half an hour late, he's not going to be happy. So enjoy the break and see you in a bit. And for those online, we'll be back in 20 minutes. Thank you very much.